Welcome to Marion's World, everyone. I'm so pleased you've decided to drop in on me, and especially when I'm going to be showing you how to finish off this cutwork page. Yes, in just 2 weeks, because really it's simple stitching that you can get on with, and I'm trying to get ahead a bit because Christmas is coming and the Advent Diary, so I hope you enjoy what you're about to see. I've got one corner of my page completed here, and I've worked out from the middle towards the outside, and so today I'm showing you just exactly how to put in your blanket stitch edging. And it is definitely good if you start at the middle and work your way to the outside. And I am just going to use the same sashiko thread that I used last week, and that's because it's clear to show on the camera because I'm using a thicker thread. It does mean that this bit of cutwork is going to look quite chunky, but I think that's okay. And if you've used stranded cotton and you've used 3 strands, you can continue doing your embroidery in the same 3 strands. But this is also the time when you could be changing colours if you want. I think the bars are always best done in the background fabric colour if you can. But the actual embroidery, so around the leaves and around the flowers, you can change whatever colours. Yeah, I see them in all different colours on the vintage textiles, and so I could have been doing pink round here for a rose, or even yellow and making it a primrose, and I could be doing green around the leaves if I wanted to. And I've also even considered taking my Inktense or some acrylics and just washing some colour in, and I still might do that eventually. So I've got quite a long length. I want as least starts and stops as I can within reason. And I'm going to start right in this centre flower. Because I've already got stitching everywhere, I don't need a knot. I can just weave through. So I'm just going to take my thread through a few of these background running stitches. So I'm in my hand again. You definitely could do it in the hoop, but I think this lends itself to being held in the hand. And I'm going to be doing all of these where the double running stitch padding has been. I'm going to be doing them with blanket stitch. Now I might be doing it a different way round to you because I'm left-handed, but basically it's exactly the same. So I'm going to go underneath my running stitch padding and through the loop, and oh, there's Misty. I'm back. She just wanted to go upstairs. Okay, so I'm just pulling through and it's just a normal blanket stitch. Now the only difference really is that you want to be trying to be consistent and putting all these stitches in nestled up against each other. Because the important thing is the rolled edge of the blanket stitch, and that has to face outward every single time, and it's even more important that it faces outward when you get to the parts where the fabric will be cut away. So I'm just going to carry on round here, and you can see, I'll hold it up as near as I can, you can see that I'm just picking, it's almost like I'm picking up that padded double running stitch. Now another thing I would say is that in a way you do not have to take any notice of those parallel lines going round, the double lines going round each flower or leaf. That was just so you could see what was going to happen, and that's somewhere for you to put your double running stitch down the middle. But now that you're onto the blanket stitch, it really is just a matter of picking up the padded, the running stitch padding and making a consistent line. And by starting in the middle and working out, you're sort of getting your hand into practice. You're making a bit of muscle memory, and the more that you do this and the more you carry on getting the lines in, and curvy lines and straight lines, you'll find that your hand will settle into a rhythm, and instead of looking at the double lines, sort of get that your needle will know where to go, and you just follow where your needle wants to go down, and you'll find that you can do the lines without really thinking too much about it. So I'm definitely working right to left on my blanket stitch, but quite often you'll see me turn the whole thing round and work my blanket stitch towards me upside down. And I would say just carry on and find your comfortable position for doing blanket stitch. And obviously my right hand thumb is coming in to make sure the loop is there for me to pull through, and as I pull out I sort of pull it down, and it's always there just waiting for my needle to come up into, and I'll just turn everything around as I go. Now, people who are experienced, you'll know all about how to get around curves. If you haven't done this before, particularly for cut work, the main point is that you're wanting this rolled edge to be as neat and tidy as you can and as consistent as you can. And so as you come to a curve, instead of widening out the stitches on the outside edge, on the rolled edge, it's more likely that you'll want to crowd the stitches on the inside edge. And so that you end up with the outside edge, that's the rolled edge of the blanket stitch, being sort of the same distance apart on every stitch, but you crowd up the legs as you go around the curve, so that the outside bit, so that would be the bit you'd cut against when it's on this bit, stays even. So if I show you that, you can see that, hopefully, that my rolled edge, the stitches are all about the same size, but here you can see they've all crowded together, the curve. And that works for the outside curve and the inside curve, so I'm going to show you that here as well. So as I get round, and I'm letting my needle just fall into place where it knows it has to be. So as I'm getting to this bit here where I need an inside curve, so here's my blanket stitch edge, my inside has to get around that curve like that, has to go around. So as long as this edge stays consistent, I can now spread the legs out a little bit as I go around the curve. So here I go, I do a little spread there and keep that close. And another one. I'm taking the rolled edge in a little bit tighter, but not much. It's more that I'm spreading the legs on the inside. And I'm almost there. And I haven't put much of a curve in there, but you can see that they're even here. They start to crowd in. They've crowded a lot, and now they've spread out, and now I'm back on an outside curve. So I'm just turning my fabric round, and you can just see I carry on. Now I am bad for working right down to the end of my thread, so I know some people would probably be fastening off long before now, but I'm always working to the very end. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and when you want to hook your blanket stitch down, you just go over the top of the loop, take that through to the back, and because I've now got all this stitching on here, I'm just going to weave through, and I don't have to weave very far. So I've got the little dip in the flower. I'm going to get another piece on, and I'm going to finish this petal off. And you will find that your needle will just go down around about the right place. And you want them to be as together, lying nicely as you can. Because in the end, this blanket stitch is what will hold your fabric together. when you cut the corners out. And you'll find that just that one row of running stitch makes such a difference to how your blanket stitch looks. It'll be a properly raised up line, which I think is really nice. It feels really nice. I'm leaving the middle open because I'm probably going to put some French knots or something there, a bit of embroidery. So now I don't want to strand, I want to do the next available petal, so which is actually this one here, but that'll be sewing backwards for me. So I'm just going to come up at this one, at this junction. So I want to sew that way round. I want to sew anti-clockwise all the way because I'm left-handed. So I've just taken my needle up to there and I'll start this petal. And there I am off again. And thank you so much for all the lovely comments I've had about this. I got some amazing comments last week after I posted last week's video about doing cut work. So I was a bit thinking, oh, people are going to not like it, or they're going to think it's too hard. But I hope I showed you how really it's not too hard at all. And you're going to get a lovely, lovely outcome at the end. I'm not sure, it might actually finish today, or might, depends how long it takes to do all the embroidery. But actually, once you know what you're doing, I don't suppose it needs to be another week, because it's just you do the embroidery, and then you'll be eager to be cutting everything out. As you come past other blanket stitches, you could just go right past them and let your rolled edge sit nice and neatly. You can even go over the top and it'll give your petals a bit of 3D-ness. I think this is my last stitch in this thread. And I hook it down and I'll finish off. But I'm already working out where my needle has to go. I don't usually work clockwise with being left-handed. I'd rather start that petal up there or come from somewhere else and finish here. So I'm going to hook this down, and because most of the petals are now finished, I'm going to come up and do a bit of embroidery on them. And I think all I need to do here is just 2 or 3 straight stitches going out. You could do stem stitch if you're using a thinner cotton, but this is quite a thick cotton, so I'm just going to go and do 3 little straight stitches on each petal, and it's as simple as that, and it's just going to make your embroidery look lovely. So I'll just make sure I keep ending back to the middle so that my thread's not travelling. I'll do one, I'll do a middle one a bit higher, and then a third one a bit lower, end back at the middle. And I'm just going to do a few French knots to finish this little middle off, make it look like a rose. I'll do 2 wraps, I think. This is quite a thick thread, but maybe 2 or 3 will be great. 2 or 3 wraps, dependent on what thickness of thread you're using. 2 seems to be perfect here. Got something to show you at the end of the video, because I've been knitting on the Stephen West's mystery shawl, the Go-Go Dynamo. Goodness knows why I thought I had enough time to do it. However, I'm only about 2 or 3 weeks late with it, and I've got it finished, and it blocked last night, and it's super huge. But I'll show you it at the end, because it has turned out pretty. By the time I film my little outro bit, hopefully I'll either wear it or I'll show you it, because it is funny. And anybody who's wanting to do the mystery knit along, there's plenty people have posted their finished ones now, so I feel confident that I'm not giving anything away. And I've got myself into a nice rhythm, so every stitch is just perfectly in the place it needs to be. And that's the sort of rhythm you want to be in by the time you get to the places that are going to be on the edge of the cutwork piece. So I'm going to get myself there and come back to you when I've done this a little bit more. But I've worked my way, sort of getting to the outside. So I've just turned the corner. I've just scribbled on the pieces of fabric that are going to get cut out so you can see exactly what I'm up to. So I've just scribbled on them with a bit of pencil. They're all going to end up not being there. So anything that borders that piece that's going to get cut out, this has to be as evenly consistent as you can, and that includes when you come over the connecting bars. Now, as I've said before, mine are quite thick because I'm trying to do them in a way that you can see it, but your connecting bars should have been sewn to the middle of the double line, and so as you come across, just sew into the bottom of the bar if you need to. Don't miss them out. That fabric needs to be secured. And so as I'm coming across, I'll just do another couple of stitches here and just make sure that that rolled edge just keeps marching along in the same way that it's done everywhere else. I come up to the connecting bar and I'm just going to put my needle right through the bottom of it. So let's have a look, see if you can see that. So this is the bar here that I'm just gone into the bottom of. Now even if you just do one stitch, that'll be fine, as long as you are just stitching through into wherever your connection is, because you need that fabric to be secure. This blanket stitch is what's going to keep your embroidery from falling apart. And there's not another stitch that will do it. Blanket stitch is the stitch to do. And then I'm going to continue going on. Again, I'm stitching upside down for the moment, because that's quite comfortable for me to do. And I'll show you once more, coming up to the bar. So there I am at one of my connection bars. I'm going to come up into it, just into the edge, and I really, as long as one stitch is in it, it'll be fine. Depends how thick your thread is, and then I'm off the other side. And I've got over the bar, and I carry on. And I'll just put my needle in so you can see. You can see how they go over the tops of the bars. So I'm going to carry on and do as much as I can. I'm not sure whether I'm going to get this bit finished for this week and then cut out, or whether I'll leave that for next week actually. I'll continue this leaf round and catching all these little bars as I go. I'll slip down to here and I'll do that leaf around, and then that'll get me back onto here, and then that petal and that petal and that petal, and so I'll just work around wherever's the nearest one to go to, and then I'll be able to put in I'll start again with these petals, and maybe they're little straight stitches at the same time. I'm just putting straight stitches in for leaf veins on these simple leaves. And then I thought about putting just a sort of a basic stem stitch, or even chain stitch, for the bigger veins on these great big leaves. And as soon as I've got this end of this leaf in, and those, that'll be then time to do the corner. I'll come back because I'm along the bottom here and about to go around the corner. I thought it was worth showing you how I deal with the corners themselves. So I'm almost there. I'll take one more stitch to get right into that inner corner. like that. And now the temptation would be to spread your legs out as you go around. You'll get a very rounded corner. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But what I usually do, because in the end the important bit is keeping this rolled edge going, I just turn 90 degrees and get my last stitch right in the inner corner. And then I turn 90 degrees and I start to stitch up the other side. Like that. And so the actual corner stays open, but the inner corner is tight with the blanket stitch. And then I'm ready to go up that edge, like that. And you'll find a lot of vintage linens are tret exactly the same way. They don't make the corner rounded, unless they have a rounded corner. But if they want a sharp corner, they sort of go one way, then the other way. And so that's what I'm doing on mine. But you do what pleases you. I'm giving you the option that that's how you can manage it. That's if you want. Well, I've got quite a bit more than halfway done, but I'm not going to finish this in time to do it as a whole thing. But I thought it's just not worth spinning this into next week, because it's just going to be more of the same thing. So even though I've only got half of mine done and most of the central motif, I'm going to cut these out and show you how this page gets finished. I've actually got a piece of fabric ready for it, because I knew I'd put blue underneath so it would look lovely with this page. Anyway, we're up to the exciting part. I'm just going to turn it round. Being a lefty, I'm going to work from this side. So the exciting part is we have to remove the fabric. You take your courage in your hands and we just have to go and cut it. So the first cuts are easier from the front, because you can see where your bars are and you can see where your embroidery is. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to give a snip. I'm going to get my scissors through and I'm just going to start and cut along. And I'll cut along under the bars. I'll make sure that the points of my scissors are underneath the bars, and there should be no stitching on the other side at all, because the whole point was that you can't strand across. So my scissors go under the bars. Once you can actually get in, then you can do it from the other side. I'll just cut through there as well. But there should be no threads anywhere underneath where you're cutting. And all I'm doing is opening it up. I'm not cutting into that leaf there, leave that there. I cut through here, underneath that little bar there, and get my scissors in, give it a cut, move along, get my scissor underneath. If you do accidentally cut the bars, it's not the end of the world. You can make a new one on top, but really you want to try your best not to. So I've just gone in. You can see where I'm putting my scissors underneath the bar, where I know there's no stitching underneath. And now I've opened it up, I can turn over. Now, if you've been stitching with some other of the weekly projects, you'll have done this cutting back before, because I did this in the Crazy Patchwork page, where I did the little hydrangea flowers, and I had to go around them with blanket stitch and cut the fabric back, and it's exactly the same thing. If you haven't done it before, I'm getting my scissors, I'm going in from the back, and I'm not cutting straight up and down like that. I've got my scissors angled in, and you'll find that the fabric just leaves a little edge of a few millimeters around the back of the blanket stitch, and when you turn it to the front, that rolled edge covers the cut fabric. So can you see I'm releasing that one? If you're worried about it, just go gently. It's easier than you think it's going to be. So I'll come here, I'll go there, and then I've got a leaf here, look. Can you see the outline of the leaf? Sorry, it's getting dark here now. So there's the outline of the leaf. So I know the leaf's not getting cut, but all this edge is. So I'm going to get my scissors in. I'm going to hold on to that fabric, hold on to it there, and I'm just going to angle my scissors in. And your blanket stitch will keep everything in. It won't let it fray. You need to be careful where you're coming up to your bars. So you can do it as a combination of from behind and from in front. If I turn it round now, look, I've already got some lace going. But when you're doing it from the front, you still can't really have your scissors flat like that. They'd need to be angled in under that blanket stitch rolled edge. So I always think it is easier, a lot easier from the back, but you can open it up from the front. So I'm going to turn over again. Here's this big leaf here. Just going to let my fabric, I'm bending it over my finger. There I've got a bar on my finger, so I know where it is. And I just go along with my little scissors, trim that bit off. I go along to this bar. I can just bend my fabric up, just pull it with your finger, and then it'll be sticking up, ready for you to just trim off. And when you've trimmed it, you can, I don't know whether, I'll hold that up so you can see it. You have got a tiny little, like a millimetre of fabric, and then you'll see where your blanket stitch has gone into the fabric, and that millimetre of fabric is covered up on the right side by the rolled edge of the blanket stitch. And you just keep going, bend your fabric up, give it a little, it's easier to separate it from the front so you can see exactly where all the bars are. So I'm going to go under there, go along to that bar, and I'll put my scissors back in, get my points under the bar, and then go, so that when you're working from the back you can actually see where they all are. I'll bend that back a bit and go in with my scissors and trim it back. And you won't trim too tight. It's almost impossible to trim onto your blanket stitching because of the thickness of the thread and the bars you've put in. You can see there against my finger, I've trimmed that as tight as I can. I've still got about a millimetre of fabric there. And that's what'll keep it all together, and it won't let it fray. Be careful on the corners. And it's just a matter of going around. And the other thing with doing it at the back is that when you turn it to the front, it's like magic. My scissors don't cut right down to the point. I might have to get another pair out. Well, look, I've got a hole there now, which is great. Where am I going? I just go anywhere. You can do it methodically. I just go wherever's the easiest, and then I go to the, you know, sort of, if I haven't had it easy, I go and cut it again or something like that. And slowly but surely you will take all of the fabric out. It's quite a good method to keep bending it over your fingers so that you're always aware where you're cutting. Anyway, I'm nearly there. I'm going to just finish getting this out. There, that's better. And then I'll turn it round and show you what it's going to look like with the blue. You can see I've got the first side done, and I've come to the second side that I can release because it's finished, and you can see I've cut round all of the little leaves and just released everything. And so I'm back in with my scissors again on the side, trimming around those little leaves that are getting kept in place by the lace and going right round the edge. Oh, I've finished my cutting out. I'm just sorry I haven't managed to get the whole of the embroidery done, but I'm going to show you it halfway. And obviously I'll be stitching this into the back, but I'm just going to lie it down at the minute, and let's hope. I haven't practiced it yet. Here we go. Put that on the edge because that's where I'm going to be sewing it in. And that's when you begin to see what you've done. And that's looking really pretty. And I'll just see if I can bring you in any more on it. I think that's about as close as I can get. So that's what you're aiming for all the time. So what I can see needs doing is there's some little pieces here that are sticking out. I just need to go in and just trim them back. You'll find that there's little bits of threads. See, there's one there. You can just go in and trim it off. So there'll be little bits of fluff and things like that that you can just fiddle about with until you've got your cut work cut out. So I'm going to see if I can get any more of this done and get it any further along. But actually, the page will be complete. I don't think there's any reason to go next week on it. So I will actually start that one next week. And the blue I'm going to stitch in. I think I'm going to stitch the panel in just at the back of this surrounding blanket stitch, because those stitches are already there for me to go into, and I'm just going to iron them together, pin them in, and I will slip stitch it around that piece of blanket stitch edge. And so that's it. Oh, and definitely listen to the outro, because I'll tell you what Friday's video is going to be, because I've already done it and it's not a stitch tutorial. So I'll speak to you then with maybe more of this or maybe not, depends. Yeah, and press the like button if you've liked it, and subscribe if you haven't, and I won't say that at the end, I'll say it now. Well, I sat all night, well, it seemed like all night, until I got it finished, and I think it's turned out so beautiful. And even though I've used quite a thick cotton using the sashiko thread, it still looks lacy, and so I hope you get the same pleasure when you cut out your pieces and back it with a colour, or you put your extra piece on top of what you've already got, as I did when I turned that over and looked at it. And I'll just show you how I've put the backing on. All I did was I cut out my blue piece of fabric and I just stitched it with running stitches, and all I did was keep lifting up the edge and just made sure that I ran my needle through the back of the blanket stitch edging, because when you think about it, there's the stitching on the back of here, like there, but it's very thick on the front, and so really you're not going to go through. But I used white thread just in case I did go through it all. I didn't want a coloured thread to show it all. And so then when I turned it over, it's like, oh yes, it's come out lovely. So I'm hoping that you're going to follow along with that and really, you know, enjoy yourself. And it just shows that cut work doesn't have to be old-fashioned and fuddy-duddy or anything like that. I think that looks pretty, it looks modern, And you could do this to a collar, could have a lovely leafy collar, could do a tiny little one, even just like that little rose in the middle with a tiny little bit of cut work around it, would make the lovely top of a pin cushion. Or anything. It's what you do with it. Once you've got the techniques under your belt, you can then think of all different ways that you can put them together that suit you. Well, it was a bit of a marathon in the end. Well, I'm so pleased that I actually managed to finish it. And there it is. I hope that you are having a go at that, and I hope you get the same pleasure as I did after I stitched that blue fabric on the back and then turned my page over, and there it was in all its glory. So I've never done it before with such a thick thread, and I thought it maybe wouldn't look as delicate, but it does look just as pretty. It's just different, and it doesn't have to be, you know, fine stitching, unless you want to do it like that, and in that case, go for it. You won't regret doing it. It's another skill that you'll have learned, that you'll be able to use going forward into the future, when you might just get some little idea and think, oh, I can do that with some blanket stitch bars and cut the fabric out, because I've done that before. So that's been my whole purpose of doing this stitch book, is really just to give you stitches, techniques that you can just bank up for the future and go forward with. I'm really pleased I managed to get it. I filmed this extra little outro again just so I could add it to the end, because I sat in a chair in my sitting room and got that finished just so I could show it to you. So here's some tips for doing it, because I think it's quite important. Firstly, keep that blanket stitch nice and tightly up to each other. You don't want them crowded in, but they just need to lie nicely one after the other, and keep that rolled edge going along the outside of where you're going to cut the fabric out. It's really important. Don't miss out the blanket stitch bars. They are important that you just, even if you just take one stitch through, that's important. When you come to cut out from the front. Put your scissor points underneath the bars and release all of the little leaves or anything like that that you've done. Release all them, get everything cut through. And then when you turn it over, you've got a chance of just lifting the fabric up, keeping your scissors flat and snipping away at that edge. And if you want to snip it in small pieces, just go easy, just a little bit at a time. Keep having a look, a little bit at a time. You will get it cut back, and you shouldn't be cutting into those blanket stitch edges at all. The thickness of the thread and the way the blanket stitch is done from the front means that you won't be cutting into it, and that little millimetre of fabric left is what keeps everything together, and you won't see it from the front. But of course, just snip away at any stray threads. Trying not to really rush the end of the stitch journal, but knowing that I just need to get it along so that when the advent diary comes along, I don't have to make some big videos as well as those daily ones. So I hope that's all right with everyone. Other news, well, I've got a video coming on Friday, and I'm going to let the cat out of the bag and say it's not a stitch tutorial, it's a cooking video, because I've made my Christmas cake and I had so many comments about it last year. I've actually shown you how I do it, and I'm posting the recipe. I've been doing it for over 40 years. In fact, it'll be 45 years I've been doing this Christmas cake, and although I do other recipes every single year, I never fail to make this one. So it's not too late. I hope you'll watch it. So that's coming on Friday tea time. The last thing to show you was, I mentioned the other week that I joined in with Stephen West's mystery knit along. Well, I finished it and it got blocked, and it is huge, but I love it. So here it is. Look at the size of it. It's huge. The pattern is lovely though, and I've used up quite a lot of my stash. I really love the this brioche here. It's lovely. This is a hand-dyed yarn that I had in my stash, as is this, but I didn't have enough of each one, so I've used two different hand-dyed merino 4-plies to make this. And then this blue was actually thrifted. Somebody gave me a jumper half done, and I took all the wool out and washed it and rehanked it and what have you, and that's what I've used for the plain. It's taken me 6 weeks in the end to make it. I might have to do some more artwork. The phonology wheel has been really popular, and I'm really pleased about that, and welcome to everybody who's joined me after seeing that, and I hope you're going to make one yourself. Good luck with that, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Oh, it'll be Friday with my Christmas cake.